Yes, Donahue needs to sub. Donahue, I can do it now. Donahue, Councilmember Donahue, he is the alternate for for Councilmember Martinez. All right. Yep, as soon as I find them, I took and put them where I'd find them. Okay. Sure.
All right, Stephanie, if you want to do me a favor and take the roll.
Supervisor Scott Haggerty.
Here.
Vice Mayor Nick Pilch. Alternate. Sorry, I'm looking for the alternate. Councilmember Peter Moss. Albany is absent. Okay, thank you. So for the record, Vice Mayor Nick Pilch is here. Mayor Jesse Arreguin. Councilmember Sophie Hahn. There's no representative for Berkeley. Vice Mayor Biddle.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Donahue. Here. Councilmember Vinnie Bacon. Here. Councilmember Al Mendel.
Here.
Vice Mayor Steve Spadofsky.
Here.
Councilmember Dan Kalb.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Tim Rood.
Present.
Vice Mayor Lee Thomas.
Present.
Councilmember Lauren Ellis. Councilmember Gary Singh. There's no representative for Union City. And that is all room.
It's not on the agenda. It should be, but Councilmember Rood, could you lead us in the pledge? Thank you very much. Approval of the agenda. It's not that hard. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Second.
Moved and second. Any objection to the motion? Thank you. Motion
I'm sorry,
passed without
Supervisor.
objection.
Can you please repeat who first? Okay, Mendel. Thank you.
What? Oh, you wanted to know
See
who
the
did?
vote.
We can probably take this off the agenda. I don't think we need to approve the agenda. Is that something normally you guys do in cities?
No.
Yeah, we don't need to approve the agenda anymore. It is what it is. We don't, yeah. Public comment, time in which you can speak to anything that's not on today's agenda. Does somebody wish to address the board? Turn your card in.
I'll take it. Yeah. Thank you.
State your name.
Good evening. My name is Alex DeGiorgio. I am a former steering committee member, and I also work by day as the Senior Community Development Manager for MCE. I'm here in that dual capacity, one as an Alameda County resident that has been working in communities of choice for about 4 years and returning to a community of choicelessness during those years. And I am thrilled, personally, that we will now have choice coming to Alameda County. And on behalf of MCE, I want to extend our boards and our staff's heartfelt compliments and congratulations to having another sister CCA emerging. At MCE, everyone knows that we can't achieve our goals, our shared objectives, unilaterally or individually. We have to unite with all of those other communities that want to catalyze sustainable development, that want to advance environmental justice, and that want to expand access to competitively priced renewable energy. So as some may know, and as I know my colleagues on staff know, there is a trade organization for the CCAs of California, CalCCA. MCE has been working closely with all the other CCAs in the state to join that, and we very much look forward and hope that Alameda County will be, East Bay Community Energy will be a part of that endeavor. There's a spirit of collective purpose among all of the CCAs, and for that reason, we collaborate and cooperate and help each other achieve our shared objectives. So on behalf of MCE, welcome, and on behalf of me and my family and network in the East Bay, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. All right. Anybody else wish to speak under public comment? All right. Looking for a motion on the minutes from the 15th of February. Vice Chair Kalb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It notes that I was excused. I think I just came in late, but I was present at the meeting on the 15th.
Okay. Make that correction to the minutes. I just was wondering, as I kind of thumbed through the minutes, did we actually approve, I know we approved the meeting dates, but was staff going to continue to look at alternatives as opposed to meeting here, or did we say we were going to just keep meeting here? I forget where we wound up there. I know. I love this place, but it's $700 a pop. I mean,
It's $450. We did have a conversation with the staff of the City of Hayward and had a back and forth about the price, and I believe they did reduce it to $450. So we do have that in your packet. We certainly wanted further direction. That
I didn't see that. I apologize, and I did look through the entire packet.
So we didn't get down to zero, but we do appreciate the City of Hayward helping out with that reduction. So we certainly wanted your direction about whether you wanted to continue this location, but we did make some progress.
Does that still come with the little meatballs and the drinks in the back?
Not to our knowledge.
Okay. All right. Yes, go ahead.
Just a note about the minutes that were distributed. They contain the correction that the primary meeting of the month is the second meeting of the month, with the first meeting of the month being dropped if we do not need two meetings.
That's correct. That was our intent, and we certainly we did have a notation. We wanted to make sure we checked with you at the end of this meeting, but we do think that switching to once a month, probably starting as soon as the next meeting, would be a possibility.
Okay. All right. So there was a motion and a second to approve the minutes as corrected. Is there,
I'm sorry. I apologize. I guess council is suggesting we got that wrong in the minutes. Was that your point, that we needed to correct that?
I believe the ones that are distributed, the printed copies, have it corrected. On the website, it's still incorrect.
I see. Yes.
Sorry, not incorrect, but it's not clearly specified.
So it was the first meeting that we are to cancel. That's the preference of the board, correct?
The default meeting was going to be the second meeting, which would be
That's right.
the third Wednesday typically.
That's my
right?
memory as well. So the minutes should be corrected to reflect that.
Yes, and I believe the ones that were handed out to us on the dais have that correction highlighted in yellow on, well, the pages are not numbered, but I think on the last page. Yeah, on the very last page, it's the near the bottom. The board discussed different meeting schedule options and agreed to keep the current schedule of 2 meetings per month, with the third Wednesday as the regular meeting, and the ability to cancel the first meeting if 2 meetings are necessary. We have that on the dais
Thank
here.
you. And our secretary has confirmed with council that we have it the correct way now, so thank you.
okay. All right. So motion, I guess there was a motion and a second. So does the maker of the motion and second accept the corrections? Who was that? Yes? Yes. Okay. So then, is there any objection to the motion? Motion will pass without objection. Okay. Move to item 5, the county staff update.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a lot of updates at this time. The first is on the multi-services bid challenge status. We reported last month that each of the bids for the 3 service categories described in RFP number 16 CCA-1 multi-services had been protested or appealed by a non-winning bidder, and county staff is following the standard procedure described in the RFP to process these protests. The process includes adjudication by the planning director and/or CDA director, and additional investigation as necessary to fully understand the issues raised in the protest. We'll process these protests as quickly as possible and report back to your board as they're completed. We expect that we'll be able to bring at least the first of these appeals to the Alameda County Board of Supervisors by March 28th. If any of the protests result in a staff recommendation different from the recommendations of your EBCE board at its January 30th meeting, we'll bring those back to your board as soon as possible. Okay.
I guess he's pausing for any questions. Anybody? Rid?
Yes. Can you clarify whether the procedures described in the RFP state that the County Board of Supervisors is the responsible party for adjudicating disputes?
The board is the responsible party.
Lucky us.
And I also want to add, just for the board's information, we have some good news for you. We just had the appeal time frame for the business plan, the local development business plan, was 5 o'clock today. We did not receive any appeals for that one. That's a very important component of this process, as you know, so we're pleased that that will be able to move forward without any delay.
Okay. Second item, Contra Costa County update. I'm going to show this slide here for the purposes of this, but this slide is actually like around 12 hours old, and there's been, I think, a few updates since then, but let me go ahead and continue. Staff and some members of your board have already begun to visit Contra Costa County jurisdictions at their board and city council meetings to provide them with information about a possible partnership with those communities. The slide shows the presentations we're working to attend as of today, actually as of this morning. We anticipate that we'll be adding some more to this schedule in the coming weeks. Staff strongly encourages the directors to lend a hand with attendance and presentations at these meetings if they can. We'll appreciate any assistance, I assure you of that, and we'll provide you with all the materials and briefing you need to make the case for EBCE. Staff especially encourages attendance at the Contra Costa County meeting on March 21st in Martinez, and encourages any advocates in the audience to join us there as well. We expect that it will be an important and precedent-setting meeting. On February 21st, a letter was sent to Contra Costa County by CDA Director Chris Baser, indicating EBCE's interest in partnership with Contra Costa jurisdictions. This letter is in your attachment 5. The letter also outlined the terms of EBCE membership for prospective Contra Costa communities, including, first, no cost to join the JPA. Second, we request that the jurisdictions assign appropriate staff to assist with the JPA agreement and CCE ordinance at their own city councils. 3, we're requiring passage of the appropriate documents, the same as all our own jurisdictions had to do, by June 30th of 2017 for free entry. Each Contra Costa jurisdiction will have a seat on the board, and voting share would be determined just as it is now for existing members, basically according to the proportion of the load that city or entity carries. New board members could be seated immediately after their resolutions and ordinances are fully processed, and the Contra Costa County member jurisdictions could be enrolled as Phase 2 customers in the summer or fall of 2018. Whenever we have definitive information from any Contra Costa County jurisdictions regarding their decision to join, staff will bring that to your board by both email and at upcoming meetings.
And if I could just add a few more details. So literally in the last 24 hours, we have some additional information that did not get into our PowerPoint, and I just wanted to share that with you. First of all, we did, since your last meeting, have 2 sessions with the City of Concord. I believe those were very well attended, and we did have staff at those sessions. So there has been a public workshop with the City of Concord. To expand on the slide you see in front of you right now, City of Danville apparently has now expanded their schedule fairly dramatically, and they now have 5 different sessions scheduled extending from March into May. So we're not clear at this time whether or not staff and board members will be requested to attend some or all of those, but we are going to be talking to their staff within the next day or so. Oakley has now scheduled a city council meeting, and that is scheduled for the evening of March 14th. And we do, as Bruce mentioned, we have the Board of Supervisors meeting. I would like to flag that really for both the board and for interested audience members. We know we have Supervisor Haggerty, your chair of this board, attending that. We will certainly be sending our staff. That coincides with one of our Alameda County Board of Supervisors meetings, so that's a very complicated morning. But I think Supervisor Haggerty would agree that we would really appreciate a very strong turnout. I think of all the meetings that we've identified on this schedule, that is the most critical one. I think probably the next most critical one, which was just given to us today, is another Concord City Council meeting, which is apparently scheduled for April 11th. And we do not have all the details of that yet. We just found that out. But I would flag both of those in particular for interested parties. I also appreciate any guidance from the board. We have had some email exchanges, I believe, from my planning director to some members of the board about possible attendance for some of these sessions. The input we get from Contra Costa County staff is that your board's attendance would be is just incredibly helpful, in addition to the staff PowerPoint, which we can and will present. So if any of you have any immediate thoughts about attendance at any of these particular meetings you see before you, or any best way to communicate with you after this evening, we would appreciate that, because we really would like to fill out our grid and make sure we have robust attendance at all these. So that's our evolving update on these many Contra Costa meetings.
Commissioner Culp?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Two things. One, could you send us all an updated list as you get them with the new dates?
Right here. Is this updated? I got that. Is this as updated as we got?
That one is hot off the presses, and I just shared that with you as the chair, but I did run that down in my comments just now. So we will send this out tomorrow morning. It's evolving as we speak.
Okay, and it's the meeting on the 21st in Martinez is a morning meeting, right?
It is.
Yeah, so I could attend that. You could put me down for that.
Okay.
Happy to be there. I could be there and stay as late as 12:30, 1 o'clock if necessary.
Terrific. So
Hopefully
we have Supervisor Haggerty and Councilman Kalb for that, which is wonderful. And I believe Supervisor Haggerty had indicated you'd encourage even audience members and interested parties to perhaps come. I think we really, if you support this process, this is the critical meeting.
I mean, the only one I wouldn't encourage in the audience is Alex DeGiorgio. Maybe not, Alex. All right.
So we appreciate that.
I do want to say that if anybody else can make it, they would really be helpful. Al?
I would just ask that when you send it out, make sure you include the meeting times, because I know most of them are Tuesdays, and if they're evening meetings, not my council meets those nights, but the day ones I could probably try to
We'll flesh out this matrix, and if everyone agrees this is the best method, either from myself or from Bruce, we will send you an email tomorrow with a specific matrix. And if it's possible, we have all your email addresses, so if that's the best way to communicate with you and you just want to email directly back to us and fill in that matrix, but we'd really love to have a board member join staff at any of these sessions if possible, all of them if possible. We will be there with a PowerPoint, so you don't really need to worry about that, but I think your presence is very important.
Thank you.
Okay, and I guess to the members that aren't here, if you could reach out to them by phone, Chris, and encourage them.
Sure.
Okay, anybody else? Let's go.
Okay, next item, launch timeline update. The board will recall that it approved an initial process timeline that included program launch in October of this year, 2017. This was predicated on an aggressive process timeline that assumed a somewhat idealized set of conditions related to process and staffing. However, several of the tasks are very complex and proving to require a bit more time than we anticipated. For example, the bid protest procedures we described earlier will allow hiring of the multi-service consultants no sooner than March 28, 2017. These contracts include essential startup tasks with somewhat incompressible timelines, and this likely shifts the timeline forward by roughly a month and a half. In the CEO hiring process, which we'll talk about a little more in a few minutes, in order to attract the best possible candidates for the job, that may also take a bit more time beyond that we originally had hoped for. We're going as quickly as possible on the CEO hire, and this is in parallel to the other process, so that all by itself would not add any to the timeline, but it's still something that's going to cause us to have to move the schedule forward a little bit. And finally, the overall timeline we've set it for Contra Costa to join the JPA has required us to extend the process overall by a few months. Your board has indicated that it feels this accommodation is highly desirable and worth the additional time and effort required. So given these factors and a few others, an October 2017 launch date appears to be fairly unlikely. A spring 2018 launch date should be readily workable, however, and fairly easily achieved.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so on County Cooperative Services Agreement update, EBC General Counsel and County Council are currently negotiating the cooperation agreement under which the county will be reimbursed for county services provided to the EBCE. These services include fiscal management and financial services, CEO recruitment and human resources support, staff and secretarial support, general counsel and legal services, and any other services authorized by your board. Currently, several of the terms are still being negotiated, including a not-to-exceed amount, which is basically the maximum amount that both parties agree could be paid back to the county, and the interest rate to be charged, if any. Staff anticipates bringing the agreement to the Board of Supervisors for their approval before bringing it to the EBC Board, although if it turns out that it's better to bring it here first because it's more expeditious, we'll probably try to do that. The agreement applies retroactively to provide reimbursement for county services provided since the process began in 2014. And that's all we have for that one.
Questions? Okay.
Okay, next is a little bit of housekeeping. Board Form 700.
Yeah, I think we all know about this.
Yeah, each director and alternates are required to fill out and sign a Form 700. It's required by the state of California for the official to declare his or her financial and economic interests. The board secretary has files for these forms, and she has a few here tonight, but she can also send blank forms via email to each director and alternate, and once they're filled out, she can collect them back from you. And these forms should be available either tonight or in the next few days. Finally, just a note about the Hayward City Council chambers. Chris
Let him finish. Sure. Keep going.
Oh, as Chris Baser already mentioned, the board City of Hayward initially had advised us that the meeting cost would be $700 per meeting. However, City of Hayward staff has told us that they can reduce that to $450 per meeting. And if the EBC board finds this fee appropriate, staff will continue to work with the City of Hayward to make this so. And that's all for item 5.
Okay, Councilmember Kolb wants to point out that you're about to get us all thrown in jail.
I think on our Form 700s, I think generally April 1st is the deadline, and sometimes when you're a newly seated board, it's based on a certain number of days after you took your seat. So it may even be before April 1st. I'm not sure, but someone should check that out and let us all know. How's that?
30 days,
We will do that.
and they are due already, and if you haven't sent one in, it is late, unless my understanding is incorrect.
That's right. Sorry about the misinformation in the report. You should be filing an assuming office statement, and that's supposed to be filed within 30 days. But we would rather that they be accurate and submitted. And don't forget that you need to report all your interests within the entire jurisdiction of the JPA, and not just you may be, if you're a city council member, may be used to reporting only interests in that city. You have to consider all of Alameda County and all of the affected cities here. Submit as soon as possible. Thank you. Yeah.
And through the chair, who do we send it to?
To the secretary.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I'm trying to, can I just go back to this county cooperative service agreement real quick? Chris, is this that agreement that I've been talking to you about the county get reimbursed?
That's part of it, yes. It's not, there's a component you and I have been discussing that is part of it. It's got some components that, candidly, we need to get some county council input, as well as I need to consult with the county administrator and with the auditor controller. But yes, that includes what you and I have been discussing in terms of county.
So when are we going to see that? Because
You'll see it by your next meeting.
You need to get the county administrator off my back.
And part of the delay is that I need time to talk to her about the terms. And,
okay, well then I'm going to just start pushing her your way.
That's fine.
Okay. Anybody else?
Chair, yeah, on that point, will we have time in that time frame for our council to review their contract as well, I assume?
I drafted the agreement and submitted it to the county. I haven't gotten any comments or feedback back about the form of the agreement, so I am feeling pretty good about that. It's still pending a couple of critical business terms, and we have not yet 100% decided whether that needs to go to the Board of Supervisors first for input on those terms before coming back to you, or if it can come to you first and then go to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, anybody else? All right, Alex.
Thank you, Supervisor Hagerty. Back to that spirit of inclusion, collaboration, and cooperation. When it comes to the inclusion of new communities, everyone knows that MCE has included new communities, including those from Contra Costa County. When people talk about Contra Costa County, I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that a quarter of the cities have already joined MCE. Now, each jurisdiction gets to make its own decision, but with those that have already made a decision, they too are part of Contra Costa County. So it's important to not tacitly exclude West County from the rest of the county. It would be a shame if the spirit of collaboration and inclusivity was not expressed by all CCAs. MCE does not see itself in competition with other CCAs. MCE has a very robust track record of supporting the launch of new CCAs throughout California, including this one right here. MCE has offered pro bono consultation to Alameda County, San Mateo, and many others. We know we need sister agencies to achieve the goals that I was discussing before. Encouraging cities to withdraw from JPAs would set a very dangerous precedent. It would also affect this board, because if it was a precedent that cities could withdraw or would withdraw from JPAs that are enterprising agencies like a CCA would be, that would set a dangerous precedent. That would appeal very much to those who oppose community choice generally. So when it comes to encouraging cities and counties to explore their own destiny when it comes to what kind of program they want to have and be part of, that makes a lot of sense. But encouraging those to withdraw from JPA would be really dangerous for this CCA and all others. Thank you.
I'm not sure that anybody's done that.
Can I respond?
Sure.
It would be great if as long as everyone is under the same understanding that encouraging cities or counties to withdraw from the JPAs they're in, then
I know that I haven't made any calls to any of your cities, but I sure wish that we had been given the same opportunity to tour around the cities that weren't in, that you guys were given the same opportunity to.
So MC has a policy of inclusion, and just like when I met Councilmember Mendel about 3 years ago, when we came and spoke to Hayward's staff, and there were other people in the room who were there too, MCE was very clear in saying, we're here to tell you about CCA generally, and MCE has a policy of inclusion, but it wasn't there to give a hard sell, and it really hasn't been. It's about advancing the movement of community choice. We serve a quarter of the cities. We, MCE, serve a quarter of the cities in Contra Costa County and receive inquiries from a lot of the neighboring cities and also folks who are in the unincorporated jurisdictions. So we go where we're invited in that regard. And we have encouraged the county and the cities to explore all their options, and I think they're doing a really good job of doing it.
Okay.
I'm glad we agree.
You feel better?
I felt great from the moment I got here.
Alex, that's great. Have a good night.
How do you feel?
All right. Anybody else? All right. These are all updates, so there's no action here at all. Get your 700s in. We saved some money. I did get 2 calls about our timeline. In the last 3 days. There is a sense amongst some people that, in fact, Chris, they quoted you saying that we're going to slow this thing up a bit. Can you kind of address that? Is that really, did you say something like that, or?
Well, I'm not sure who you're speaking to.
Well, maybe I should have talked to you offline, but it just...
No, certainly what we've been telling people, and I can tell you we've had actually just this week several interested parties in our offices who are potential purveyors of power, who are extremely interested in this process, who we think will probably be coming before your board very soon. So those are the people I've mostly been talking about timelines with. But publicly, I think what we've been saying, and privately, is exactly what you've been hearing, which is that the October 2017 launch date, for a variety of unavoidable reasons, is not looking very realistic at this point. Spring 2018 2018 is almost certainly where we think we're going to land for all the reasons that Bruce just described and we talked about at the last meeting. So I think that's the one timing component that we've all been very clear on with people. We don't want anyone to be surprised if October 2017 doesn't materialize, because that's looking extremely, very much like a long shot at this point. So,
Okay, I just really need us to do, and I mean, the reason the board is agreeing to meet twice a month is to keep the pedal to the metal.
Absolutely.
And I just need to make sure that we're doing everything we can. I do understand when there are protests to the bid, that will slow that down. But even when that happens, I mean, I fully expect that the protests will be handled in a timely manner.
Correct.
And that, that if you get slowed down, and I don't understand the reasoning, and maybe you could explain to me. I know Councilmember Rood spoke to, or had a question why the Board of Supervisors. I don't really understand why we became the default to the RFP. When there's a protest. I don't know why we're the default. I don't know why this board can't be. But sometimes it's difficult getting on the Board of Supervisors agenda.
Right.
And I don't want that to happen. So, how do we make sure that doesn't happen? Right. How do I make sure that we continue to, I don't want to say jam it through, but how do we continue to run things through in an expeditious manner to make sure this stuff gets done?
Right. No, yeah, I can unpack several questions there if you give me a couple of moments. So first of all, on the time frame and why the Board of Supervisors is involved, these contracts that we're talking about will really be the last ones that we envision going through the Board of Supervisors. And the quick answer to why that is that we launched those RFPs. Those processes all were initiated before this body existed. Those were all kicked off in the fall. We had a steering committee at that time, but the only official entity out there that could act as a procurement agent was the County of Alameda, right? And so those are the remainder of those contracts. And once one of them just got through today, the business plan got through without any challenges, which is terrific. The others, we have to go through the county process. The earliest date, we back engineered it, and candidly, the 21st was theoretically a possibility at the Board of Supervisors, but the 21st will be the critical day at the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors. So 1 week we felt was worth it to make sure that we had you and all the key members at our Alameda County Board of Supervisors. Now, I want to assure all of you, and particularly Supervisor Haggerty, that all the conversations I've had so far with potential purveyors of power, with even Contra Costa jurisdictions and others, have indicated that these slight variations, as Bruce indicated, we might be bumping out now about a month to a month and a half over what we would have hoped at the beginning of this year. None of those things seem to be affecting the critical path issues that could affect, I think, key issues that your board has expressed concern about. Contra Costa participation, making sure that we have available power sources that are available. Everyone I've talked to thinks that the timeframes you have moving forward now are going to work out very well with their potential timeframes. So I would alert all of you candidly if I thought any of this was creating problems. I think we're still fine. But I would agree with you. If we got past March with any of these contracts, I would be concerned also. But March 28th we're aiming for, and I think we'll be fine.
Okay. Well, there was some pretty strong comments given to me as to why this would be slowing down, and I just want to make sure that we don't. Anybody else? Okay. So with that, I'm going to leave this item and move to item 6. There's a little, Al, you know everything. How do we get rid of this little City of Hayward thing?
I don't know, sorry.
It's kind of interfering with the bottom line here. Maybe if the guy's listening, he can remove it.
Well, they can hear you, so if it's possible, they'll do it.
If you can remove the City of Hayward in the lower right-hand corner. Is it up there?
No, it's not up there. It's only on our
It's only on the iPads. Okay, we'll see what he can do. All right, go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce item 6. Good evening, Board. We are tonight before you requesting a review and approval of the budget allocations for Phase 2 and Phase 3 of EBCE implementation. Within that, we are asking that you direct county finance staff to establish an EBCE fund within the county treasury and to develop an EBCE chart of accounts through which to track external hard costs per the implementation budget, as well as internal and county staff costs incurred in order for that reimbursement to occur through the JPA once the JPA is operational and revenue positive. Another subset of that recommendation is to authorize CDA staff to forward billings to county finance as authorized officials to approve payments and warrants in an ongoing manner. Second, we are asking you to direct staff to develop and issue an RFP for EBCE banking and credit services. We'll be talking more about that tonight, and we can answer any questions. So first up is just a quick reminder that in June of 2014, the County Board of Supervisors allocated Phase 1 funding in the amount of $1.325 million. That is currently coming out of CDA's budget. It was internally financed out of CDA's budget. And there was a second tranche approved in October of this year for an additional $2.41 million, covering phases 2 and 3 and getting us through the point of program launch when the program will be augmented by a line of credit, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. For a total amount of $3.193, that's what remains available sort of out of that total pot of money. $560,000 has already been spent of that initial Phase 1 money that CDA is managing currently. So things are going well with the budget. The first couple of slides we're going to show you here, we had to break these down into 3 slides so it wasn't such tiny type, but essentially what you have before you tonight as an attachment to your packet is a budget that comes out at $2.4 million. Covering 3 categories of services that generally follow the vendor services that will be supplementing staff work. The first is technical and energy services. I'm not going to run through all of these specific numbers other than to say the estimated budget is at $410,000. There is a chance that the ultimate expenditure could come in underneath that. We were conservative in our estimates because we know that bids came in slightly higher than that, and we had bids come in underneath that. We also have experience in the field. So we felt like this was a reasonable number, a conservative number, hopefully come in underneath. Next slide. The next is communications, outreach, and marketing. That is the biggest chunk of money that is allocated within your implementation budget. That includes everything around development of program collateral, program messaging, an interactive website that also has opt-out capabilities, a video, newsletters, community outreach, tabling. A whole lot needs to be done throughout a very diverse and big county at local events, and this just takes manpower and materials and all that kind of stuff. It also does include a robust advertising campaign, which will include paid advertising for radio, potentially TV, if that makes sense, newspapers. So there is a component of this that's paid advertising. Social media, of course, is a big part of it. And then the last chunk of money is set aside for customer enrollment, for development of the content, the design of the customer opt-out notices, net energy metering notices. It includes all the printing, postage, and all that good stuff for the first phase of customers in your program. That comes out to a round estimate of $1 million. Again, a conservative estimate. We did get some bids in that were below that. We have found, however, that sometimes you do end up spending a fair amount of money on outreach, and so we felt like placing a cushion in that was wise for now, hopefully coming in underneath on all of these categories. Next.
And I'm assuming all that will be competitively bid?
That's part of what's going on with the bid protest right now, because all of these services are what were part of the RFP process and the contracting process. The third slide there is sort of the rest of the catch-all: project management, legal, and other services. That does include general project management and consulting assistance from Sequoia Foundation, the team that you are currently working with. The legal review of banking, lockbox, and energy supply agreements, just to make sure that we have some specialized legal expertise to understand power agreements and some of the finer nuances that are probably above, not above, but different than what general counsel does or county counsel does. It's just a different body of work. And then you will recall at the Board of Supervisors meeting in October, you all approved a local development business plan, and $500,000 was allocated for that. The bids have come in right at that, almost at that number. So that rounds us out at $2.4 million for Phase 2 and Phase 3 implementation budget. This is the budget that we would then ask the County Treasurer's Office to use to set up a chart of accounts, to then begin tracking the accounting and then reporting against this budget on a regular basis to your board. So I'll stop there unless you want me to keep going into the next phase of the credit services.
Questions?
Can you go back one slide, please? Question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on customer notification, is that dollar amount notification to every ratepayer in the county, or what's that assumed?
No, it's not. It's a great question. Thank you, because it would be a much higher number. So as you will recall, we do plan to begin enrolling customers in phases. That phasing strategy is yet to be determined. That's part of what we'll do as part of your implementation plan. So right now, I believe that that budget is predicated upon 200,000 customers in Phase 1. Don't know yet whether that'll be a mix of residential, commercial, all that will be worked out. But that's your first 200,000 customers. And then the future costs of enrollment would be borne by revenues coming in to the agency.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions on that part? Okay. So then, the next part of the staff report has to do with the fiscal services that will be enshrined in the cooperative services agreement that was just referenced here earlier. This is part of what we're working on with county council and general counsel. So this is a list of the services that the treasurer's office has agreed to provide to support our effort throughout this process. And I'll run through them if you wish, but they're also in your staff report. Do you want me to cover these verbally, Chair? Or, yeah? Okay. The first is, we've already talked about establishing an EBCE fund within County Treasury and track project expenditures for reimbursement, cut checks and pay authorized invoices to external parties and contractors, produce financial reports for this board, assist in the development of an initial agency operating budget. That is right now projected to occur in June and July for your first fiscal year to commence in July of this year. Assist in the scope development and bid review for the EBCE Banking and Credit Services RFP. Since they are finance directors and whatnot, they can help make sure the content of that RFP and the review is done properly. Assist with requirements of the anticipated credit guarantee to be provided by the county as well as any interested member agencies. And then assist in supporting an independent audit when the time comes. If the county treasury is still involved, or if the EBCE is hired at CEO and a finance manager, they may not have to do that last one. But we wanted to make sure we had a robust suite of services that are contemplated. And that's been discussed with Steve Manning and his staff, and all of that is underway as we speak, pending your approval, of course. Okay, any questions on that one?
I have a question. Is the county prepared to take on this much work? I mean, have they maybe represented that, but I mean, does this represent a significant increase in work they would have to do, or?
Doing it so far.
I think I would agree with the chair. Compared to what we've already taken on, this is it's continued extra work. It involves some new departments which we're pulling in, but they are able to be responsive. But it's difficult, candidly. But we will get it done.
It's not to say that they're not happy the day that they turn this over to the agency. They'll be very happy that day when CDA turns it over to an executive director and his staff. They can't wait for that day.
Okay.
But it is anticipated that County Treasury will stay on board for 6 to 8 months, really until such time that the agency is functional, independent, has staff, has the capacity to turn it all over in a way that's seamless.
But I had a session with my staff and the auditor controller staff earlier this week where we went through all the specific protocols, so they're very much up to speed on exactly what will be expected of them, and they are ready and prepared to do that. They are also hoping it won't be more than 6 to 8 months, because it will be a good amount of extra work.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking, though.
Yeah.
They have, truly, the county staff has been working very hard on this, and really even the consultants have been, working hard, but county staff has really been taking on a lot. And this is not the only extracurricular activity they've taken on. I think they're dealing with something called cultivation, too, which is a rather large issue, as you can understand, in the vast area of the county, mostly East County. So there's a lot going on. A few other things you guys are working on, too. So, okay, go ahead, John.
Okay, great. So then we'll move on to the next part of the staff report, and that is kind of the next thing that we need to start working on, and that is securing an agency banking partner, as well as financing for your initial power purchases and initial working capital. And so this is a very thumbnail, high-level overview of what the deal is here, but you've got your startup capital thanks to the county. That will be repaid with a modest interest rate, TBD, and I know that's part of the discussion underway right now. Repayable to the JPA once the JPA is up and running, operational and revenue positive. So hopefully that's within a year or two of program commencement. Just a reminder, the county staff time and all soft costs will also be included in that bill that ultimately is presented to the JPA to repay in the first couple of years. So the next thing that we're going to focus on now is the line of credit. And the way this has worked with other CCAs is that in the last 3, I guess, have used an RFP that was developed by the City of Mountain View on behalf of Silicon Valley Clean Energy in order to have kind of a public procurement process around banking and credit services. Before, it had been sort of bilateral conversations. And so it has been formalized. The RFP has worked well for a couple of the other CCAs. Monterey Bay is the most recent one to use it. And essentially what you all would be asking for is a line of credit or term debt, if you prefer. You can stipulate both in the RFP. It's generally offered at 2 years. To augment the startup and get you guys fully operational. The total amount required is to be determined. However, just based on past experience and for a county this size, it's likely to be, could be upwards of $25 million. It really will depend on that phasing strategy, because what you need to procure for are your first and second phases, and to basically have enough credit backing to go into the market. And you guys are a big program, and so what we know is Silicon Valley, for example, took out a $20 million line of credit. So I'm guessing you guys will be a little north of that. But your operating budget will be able to back it up. So the big issue here is that some portion of that is going to require credit guarantee. As we have seen in every other case, you guys are pre-revenue. You don't have a staff yet, and so the banks have been great to step up, but, until you've got some operations, they're not going to take on all that risk. So right now, there are discussions, I believe, happening with the county on that issue. I know that in many other places, there have been multiple member agencies that have shared the credit guarantee. It is, as far as I understand from Chris and folks, not required of your member agencies at this point, but sure would be appreciated if you're willing to participate in that process. The way that works is that some CCAs have required a cash collateral posting to cover the pre-revenue guarantee requirements. Most others have gone with letters of credit, and really that will depend on the counterparty that you're working with. So we're going to know much more when the bids come back for banking and credit services in terms of what your terms are, what's required, and what you can get. What we have seen is that for the most part, the best deals come from kind of a single entity where they get both the deposit and the lockbox capabilities as well as providing the credit. That definitely seems to help in terms of favorable interest rates. But we're not going to know any of this until we get our RFP out on the street and we see what third-party lenders are willing to do. So that is part of the action tonight, is requesting guidance or direction to prepare that RFP and either bring it back to you at the next meeting or issue it.
And Sean, if I could just add a nuance, technically, I don't want there to be any confusion. All of the parties that joined the JPA, including the county, did not formally commit to any sort of credit guarantee. So currently, neither the county nor any of the cities are formally obliged. We want to strongly encourage as much participation as possible, and certainly, the county will be taking up that possibility also. But neither the county nor any of the cities are formally committed in any way at this point. But we will need that, obviously, to move forward from some of the parties of your board.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Hal?
So for a $25 million line of credit, how much of that collateral are we talking about? Can you put an order of magnitude estimate on that?
What we've seen in the past couple of rounds is that in some cases, it's only been the amount that is drawn down pre-revenue. Now, if that is the case, that would be pretty great news because you already have your startup capital, and I don't think you're going to need a lot more pre-revenue dollars to get you to the starting point. Other places we've seen half of the value of the line of credit requires a credit guarantee. So I can't give you a definitive answer. What I can tell you is things have been getting better because this is becoming a more known quantity. The risks are more known. One thing that we are going to have to watch for in a program of your size is making sure that we have a banking institution that has the credit capacity to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's not just sort of operational capacity, but they've got to be able to live within their debt caps and everything too. So we're going to be doing some preliminary homework with banking institutions in the Alameda County region to just let them know that this is coming and begin to educate, because there's a lot of banks out there that just don't know what this is yet. Still fairly new for many banks.
And I guess what I'd say is that you're basically asking us to go back to our member agencies and start having conversations with them about this, and it's difficult to do when the range is somewhere between 0 and 12.5 million. So the sooner we can get some kind of estimate on that, the easier it's going to be for us to have those conversations in a real kind of way.
Right, and I think the way for us, there's two things that have to happen. One, we'll start working on the RFP and get that shaped up for you. The second is we got to get those technical and energy service contractor in place, because one of the very first things they do is that they take the pro forma operating budget that was part of your technical study done by MRW. That's a very good document, but there's lots of assumptions baked into that. That needs to actually be brought fully up to date with current market pricing, current estimates based on the membership you have. And so that all needs to be done before we actually finalize what the final number is going to be relative to the credit that you need. So unfortunately, there's a lot of sequencing that goes on, which is why this timeline issue keeps getting brought up. But that needs to happen, and we're hoping that's going to happen coming up here in March and April.
All right, thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Thomas.
So just to make sure that I understand this, and at some point, potentially, we are saying that in order to try to receive this amount of credit, that we are looking for individual cities to pony up to basically get this. Am I reading that?
Yeah, we'll certainly need some of the participating jurisdictions to participate. We'd love, I think, to have as robust a complement of cities and the county as possible. I can't guarantee you at this point that the county is ready to do that, but certainly in the past, counties, especially as sponsoring agencies, have played a role there. But I think there's some good examples of jurisdictions where they've had multiple parties, cities and counties doing that. So yes, I think we are trying to gently encourage you to start thinking about that.
And have you based that off of city credit ratings in regards to selection processes?
Sometimes, yes. It depends on what the bank requires. In one place that we're working, a couple of the large members are going to be the counterparty with the bank in terms of that credit guarantee, and then there will be sub-agreements, interagency agreements with the rest of the members on a pro rata basis. In some places where we've worked, not all members have participated, and that's okay. In Silicon Valley, it's only 4 out of 9, I believe they have. And then in other places like San Mateo, the county did the whole thing. So we've really seen a range. What I need to express is that this is not an optional, the credit guarantee will be required, unfortunately, for you to be able to get into the market. It's just a matter of how much of that total line of credit will have to be covered, and we'll of course be negotiating that down as much as possible, but it's just one of those realities right now.
Okay. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know some of our local jurisdictions have already been contacted about this for our local cities, but here we are going to be searching for banking services, and we are an energy authority. I think we should be cognizant of what banks around the country are already invested in the Dakota Access Pipeline, since there's been tremendous public interest in trying to make sure that local jurisdictions throughout the country, including here in Alameda County, do not have any unnecessary investments in those banks. And since we're starting from scratch, we might as well be aware of who falls in that category and who doesn't when we're evaluating who applies to the banking services for us.
Okay. Duly noted. Okay. Are you done?
Just the last very thing to say, this will come up later, but the line of credit is sort of this intermediary thing, and then later there will be longer term working capital, term debt. It gets much more complicated and interesting. The idea is that you really go after a robust reserve account in order to establish a credit rating. Hopefully that's going to be able to happen sooner than later now that CCAs, more of them are at the table and functional. But that's sort of the longer term play. By then you will either have a CFO or a finance manager, and they will be taking care of all of that for you. But I just wanted to give you the full picture. And so that concludes the remarks, and we do have some action items on this, Chair.
Okay. Now, as far as the action items on this one, they actually are what?
The first is to authorize the, sorry, hold on.
Because, I mean, really, the last one that we just spoke of is not the action item.
The recommendations are to review and approve the budget
Right,
allocations,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
And then those sub-points that go with
Direct
it.
the county staff,
Yeah.
authorize CDA, forward billings, and direct staff. Okay. You see the actions before you. Somebody want to move the item?
I'll go ahead.
I got a motion by call. I heard
Second.
somebody make a, was that, Vinny, was that you? Can you be the second? All right, I got a motion by Culp, a second by Bacon. Is there any objection to that motion? All right, motion passed without objection. We'll move to item 7.
Item 7, I believe Sean and Sandy Rivera, our assistant planning director, are going to present that. I just wanted to provide quick preview and let you all know that in response to your board's direction last time, we spent a lot of time talking amongst ourselves and with our county HR director about the most expeditious way and the best way to get a prime candidate for the CEO for this organization. And I think actually anticipating one of the questions you already sent my way this evening, the quick answer is that we do think that your board contracting directly in this process with the eventual applicant that you choose is the way to do that, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on that. But that would be a good counterpoint to our earlier discussion about the county procurement process. This would really be the first contract that you as a board are dealing with directly and engaging in a direct negotiation and contracting process. So with that, I'll turn it to Sandy and Sean.
Okay, so I'm just curious. Does everybody have the edits?
That should be on your dais. There were two sets.
I just want to make sure everybody has the edits. So.
There was an original packet that had the staff job description, the initial recommendation, and then we received comments from Local Clean Energy Alliance. And so then there's a third version that should be sitting on the dais, and it's posted on the web now, that incorporates Clean Energy Alliance's comments together with staff comments as the recommended version.
Version D3.
Version 3.
Okay.
So should I begin item 7?
Let's roll.
Okay, so item 7 is an action item, or there's a couple of action items with that, but it's for the board to review and approve recruitment plan and job description for the interim chief executive officer. And that's what we were referring to in terms of those attachments and the versions that you have. As well as appoint an ad hoc committee to conduct an interim CEO interviews and recommend selection of and services and discuss the services contract with an interim CEO for approval anticipated in May at your May board meeting. The recruitment process that we have outlined or proposed would be, as Chris described, a direct contract with your board. The county staff or staff, including consultants, will be working on the recruitment. And that recruitment process includes, of course, this temporary contract with your board for about 6 to 8 months until we have employee benefits and a staffing plan established. Part of that process would be to have, and this process is very similar to all these the other operational CCEs in the area, and that staffing plan. The procurement process would include the outreach with assistance from HR, county HR, and county staff would review these applications for qualifications and then have an executive group or leader, executive leaders and experts that would review these applications and have the initial interview with the recommended candidates. And from there, we would be looking to they would recommend those candidates to the ad hoc board's ad hoc committee, and and we can go through what that ad hoc committee might look like, but it would be appointed by your board. But that would include possibly a CCE executive from one of the other CCEs in the area. I think one of the places we were thinking about, Sean, was from PCE or Peninsula Clean Energy or Silicon Valley Clean Energy, as well as some of the board members here. It wouldn't necessarily have to be the chair or the co-chair, but they would also be in this this first interview phase for this candidate. For the candidates. Then from that point, we're looking at those recommendations would move to the full board, and the ad hoc committee would give that recommendations to the full board, as well as would have discussed the contract negotiations and details of that contract. So we're anticipating that it would be at the board wrong direction. at least by late May, the board would have closed sessions, and then we'd be able to approve a candidate in mid-May for employment to begin in June. So that's the proposed plan. Of course, there's the issue of approving the job description as well. And so you have the job description. The version 3 is the recommended version and incorporates both clean energy, East Bay Clean Energy?
LCEA.
LCEA, sorry.
Yeah, it includes the recommendations we got from Local Clean Energy Alliance, which staff thought overall were very good recommendations. And then staff just added a few touch-ups to that to try and make sure that a few elements of the original CEO job description that we felt were essential were not lost. So staff is, I think, happy to recommend the version that you have there, version 3.
And there are comments that are listed on that version 3, and we can go through some of the areas that were not incorporated in or accepted in that version. If you'd like to, we could go through that. As you read the document, whether or not we can backtrack and look at what those changes are, if you'd like. Along with that would be your approval of the job description and approval of or appointment of an ad hoc committee. And those, the recommended amount for an ad hoc committee, I think we said 5 to 7 for that?
At the most. So let's be clear that what we're asking for tonight is a small group of board members that want to participate in this process. And
I don't think you need me to appoint the ad hoc committee tonight, do you?
It's not, so let's be clear.
It's not as timely for that?
The ad hoc committee that we're asking for is a subcommittee of the board. That doesn't mean that that's the only group that will be interviewing the first round of candidates. So it's just identifying interested folks that want to walk this path with us, and then additional folks will be tapped, like a CEO from another CCA, perhaps the chair of the CAC. We don't want that interview panel to be much larger than 5 to 6, because otherwise it's just a massive, firing squad for one candidate. So that was going to be in the first round. The second round really then is focused on, those finalists are focused on the ad hoc subcommittee of this board.
And the ad hoc committee doesn't necessarily have to be appointed today. I think timely, it could be, the time necessary would be even at the next meeting.
Yeah.
At least the job description, so that the job description or the job posting could occur by May 8th, is what we'd be looking for as the primary action for the board tonight.
So you want approval of the job description tonight?
Yeah, right. If you're able to appoint the ad hoc committee members tonight, that's fine too, but that can also go to the next meeting.
Okay. So first let's deal with the job description, which is before you. I'm sure everybody's had a chance to look it over. What problems did we have with it?
And Sean can go over the areas that were integrated from the additional edits, and then what areas we incorporated and what areas we didn't.
Yeah. So we incorporated 90% of Local Clean Energy Alliance's comments. They were really good and helpful. So I think that's the very first thing to say.
Well, there's only one you didn't, right?
What's that?
2.
Was there just one?
Yeah. So the red,
And it was a word.
is Local Clean Energy Alliance, and then the staff met and talked about the whole thing. And you'll see where you have blue.
Right.
That's where the staff either amended it slightly. So basically, we just added.
So on page 2 was where you disagreed with him.
Yeah, but they're very soft disagreements.
And it was just one disagreement about a word.
A word here, a word there. We added a couple of things to be inclusive. And I can walk through this if you want, but we feel like...
I don't know. I've read the first version, the second version, now the third version, so...
Okay.
I don't... Yes.
I just wanted to say that I was fortunate to be reading my packet this afternoon when you had posted this version online, so I was able to read this beforehand, and I think the edits are fine. I don't think they materially change the job description, and I think we should move forward with this.
Okay.
Commissioner Cald?
Thank you. So I think the language for the job description is fine, and thank you for all those who had input into it, including the folks in the Local Clean Energy Alliance. This is kind of something I think I brought up last time a little bit. Towards the end, it essentially tells people, potential applicants, we're hiring you as an independent contractor, essentially temporarily, and then that could, eventually we will hire a permanent general manager or CEO, whatever we would call it, and you, the independent contractor, if you're an individual, you might be the person we select, or you might not, for the permanent job, right? So if I said something incorrect, let me know. Otherwise, let me continue. So there could be people out there who have a job right now. I don't mean at Starbucks, but have a good job that's similar in the industry, and they want this job, but they would have to give up their other job to get a temporary job here for 6 to 8 months in the hopes they will get the permanent one, but they may not be assured that, so they may decide not to go for the temporary one, but then they may put them in a position to be less likely to get the permanent one. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's a difficult position. I'm not sure what the best solution is, but I don't want to lose potential great applicants out there because we're starting for a temporary job.
I've got a question to your point, and it's a really good one because we went through this exact same problem down in the South Bay. Same scenario. And so the idea, and I'm hopeful that the language could be amended to more clearly reflect this, the idea is to hire the CEO as your permanent CEO and not go through this business of interim and having somebody have to jump through another set of hoops 6 months later. You will absolutely see the difference in the quality of applicants you get for all the reasons you just said. But it is a reality that that person will be brought on under contract just as a function of necessity right now, with the expectation that he or she will then become the first full-time employee of this agency once all of that is resolved. And so maybe what we can do, if it's allowed, I would actually say, do we have to call it an interim an interim CEO? I would suggest that we remove the term interim if your board is comfortable with that, and then just be more clear about the process as opposed to giving any sense that that person is potentially going to have to go through the whole thing again.
I'm fine with that. I mean, they're an at-will employee, most likely. So if we don't like them after 6 months, we can probably get rid of them anyway. Not that we want to. So I'd be okay with that. Happy to hear other suggestions.
So the change would be to
remove interim.
Hold on.
And primarily interim was used just for the contracting process, so absolutely that doesn't need to be part of the recruitment.
Right.
Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, I would disagree. I think removing the term interim is fine, and I basically second your point. I mean, if we don't like this guy after 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, a year, they're at will, and we could, remove them. So it's kind of implied however we hire them.
Councilmember Biddle.
I think that's fine. I think that's the way to go.
All right. Okay, so...
Just a comment over here.
Councilmember Pilch, I was actually trying to get back to you.
No, thank you. Yeah, I agree that's a fine way to go. And in fact, when I read this through, it did seem to be a matter of simple logistics, that there wouldn't be an agency to employ the CEO when you need the CEO, and you'd have to bring that CEO on as a contractor to form the agency, which could then employ the CEO. It was a simple matter of jumping through those logistical hoops. So removing interim is a fine way to go, I believe.
Okay, so how do we proceed? Because there's obviously a willingness on the board to try to figure out a way to convey to this person that this job is a 6 to 8 month job. However, it'll most likely morph into the CEO's job. How do we move forward with that?
And that's that would be part of the process more than it'd be the recruitment. I mean, the recruitment would be about the position itself, the job responsibilities, just as it's described in the third version. The 6 to 8 month portion of it, which doesn't necessarily have to be part of that recruitment. It's really more about the contracting, that you would contract at 6 to 8 months in that in that format, in a direct contract, until such time that benefits package are determined and EBCE has all the rules and regulations that are needed for hiring staff.
Okay. All right. Vinny, can I just ask one question real quick? How hard is it just to pull out the word interim?
Not hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a draft.
Legally?
Yeah.
Council? So just pull out the word interim, we can move on?
Right.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, okay, Vinny?
I would just say, I mean, the language is pretty clear. It says the position will convert to a full-time salaried employee of the agency, which, you know, it does not say you will be re-reviewed. It says the position will be converted. So I think that's pretty clear.
So I'm going to allow either you or Councilmember Pilch to make the motion because you're both trying to like the thing. So if either one of you want to make a motion so we can move on.
I'll make a motion that we approve it. And I don't know where exactly that word interim is, but I'm happy with seeing it removed.
So you're making a motion you're making a motion to approve this and remove the word interim.
That's correct.
I'll second it.
There you go. You got in there. All right. Okay. I got a motion and a second. Is there any objection to the motion? Okay. That gets rid of the job description. In relationship to the ad hoc committee, you said 4 to 5? 4 to 5 of us?
At the most.
4 or 5 board members.
Of us.
Yeah.
All right. Who's interested? Of course, the chair and vice chair.
Could be 3. I mean, you know, doesn't have to be 4 or 5.
Spadowski? Or Thomas? Well, okay, anybody, I'm trying to draft. Anybody else want to do?
So who's missing
Rude?
tonight that we can volunteer?
Huh?
Who's missing tonight that we can volunteer? That'll teach them.
Diane has a rough schedule, though, I think. Well, okay, so far we have 3. If anybody else wants to do it, contact me. Okay?
Okay.
All right, you got 3 so far. Kolb, Haggerty, and Spadowski.
Through the chair. So if I see this correctly, if I read this correctly, the first round is going to be vetted and narrowed down by county staff in cooperation with, in conjunction with a handful of other expert type folks that who is picking those other experts to be part of this first screening committee?
It'd be the county staff would be looking at that unless your board would choose.
Okay, so
Well, and the ad hoc subcommittee. So the ad hoc subcommittee will walk this path with us now, and you will be part of the decision making as we go along here. And you can participate in the first round
For the
interview.
first screening, is the ad hoc committee involved?
Not the first screen.
No, you guys need to figure this out. One's shaking head no, one's saying yes. Normally we're not involved in the first one.
Typically not.
Not in the county, no. So you guys need to go figure this out. Normally it's like we usually include like people from the cities, city staff, things like that. So for the first screening, I think you guys should go figure it out. I don't really believe, that's why I was having a little problem trying to appoint tonight, because I don't believe normally we're involved in the first screen.
There could be some board members that might want to be part of that first committee that are not in the second committee or in the ad hoc committee.
I don't know that we want to be.
We don't have to, but they could. Yeah.
If I may, I would just comment or suggest that as you're looking for this initial screening committee of county staff and other experts, consider if one of our cities has staff who has some expertise in this area, then you could look to that. Sure. If there's a full-blown municipal utility in the Bay Area where a high-level person or a CEO of that person could lend themselves to this, let's get a good group, someone with some real
solid.
Alex DeGiorgio.
Yeah.
No, Alameda. You might want to talk to somebody in
Alameda or even Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's.
Okay.
Okay, so we can move on. I think we've dealt with this one. So
there were just a couple of other updates, just in terms of temporary office location, and then the simultaneous RFP for outside HR contracting for the additional staff beyond the CEO and also to provide guidance and consultation with the board with regard to HR benefits and packages and rules, so that they would act as your consultant as well. So we would be looking to issue another RFP for an outside HR firm beyond the CEO recruitment.
Okay, but that's not actionable.
That's not an action item.
So if I may on that point, does it make sense to, thank you, does it make sense to start that process before the CEO is hired, or wouldn't
It's simultaneous. We're doing both as fast as we can. And so to get this started, of course, your approvals today would be able to let us begin the recruitment next week. And so the HR RFP, the RFP for the outside HR firm, we'd be doing simultaneously. Because that takes longer, by the time the CEO's on, we could have a contract at that time with the outside firm. It's just that if we had the outside firm hired first and then the CEO wouldn't be hired until much later.
Next item, please.
I'll let it go.
What did you have something to say?
No, if I did, I would. If you have a
Well, you said you were
happy to
letting
answer
it go, so I didn't know if you were trying to sell something. Or...
It's fine.
Okay. Okay. Recommended contract award for local development business plan.
Okay. There's a staff recommendation for this one. The EBCE Board of Directors recommend ALH Urban and Regional Economics as the vendor to receive the contract for the LDBP analysis. The vendor's packet is attached as attachment 8. The board will recall from last month that county staff had initiated the procurement process for the LDBP vendor teams. Staff received bids from 5 qualified vendors and assembled a county selection committee consisting of 4 interested persons. The CSC interviewed the following qualified bidder teams: ALH Urban and Regional Economics, Ramey & Associates, Strategen Consulting, Energy Resources Integration, and DNV GL. Of these, ALH Urban and Regional Economics was the clear high scorer of the interview process and is a vendor recommended to carry the LDBP process forward. The ALH proposal brought together a team of 5 exceptionally well-qualified experts in the field of DER assessment, both grid and customer side, energy policy development and analysis, as well as a firm dedicated to community outreach and stakeholder engagement. The budget proposed, which is $485,000, is reasonable and within the amount budgeted for this exercise, and their references were exemplary of a highly qualified candidate. The board will also recall that the goal is to have this document completed by October 30th this year. The Board of Supervisors may be able to approve this contract along with some of the others on March 28th. We said March 14th in the staff analysis, but that apparently, as I understand it, is going to be a retreat day, so decisions may not be made that day. But by March 28th...
Say that again, stop what?
The staff report recommended that March 14th could be the day when the Board of Supervisors could approve this contract. But I think March 14th is a retreat day, if we understand correctly.
So put it on the 7th.
Yeah, I don't think we have time for that. I think the timing is not possible for the 7th. We're already at March 1st. And we had to wait until just today to get through the protest process, which is not happening. There's no protest for this bid.
There will be a number of contracts that will be at the Board of Supervisors on March 28th, and this would be one of them.
So now we have to go to the 21st? Right?
We could do the 21st.
And the 21st is when you want me in Contra Costa
That's
County.
exactly right. So we were avoiding the 21st simply for that reason.
Now you're going to go to the 28th? So this is where we're getting accused of...
Right. With your assistance, we might be able to shoehorn it in on the 7th. We would already be past the usual deadline, but I know we have our analyst in the audience, so perhaps you can help me twist his arm, and we can possibly get that on the board agenda with your assistance. So we could try.
On the 7th?
That would be, would we have it ready?
I can't really push for the 14th
We haven't
because I'll be
finished
in
contract
DC, so.
So my staff is telling me the 7th is just physically impossible. The 14th is a retreat, I believe, correct?
Yeah, and I'm not even there.
We can do the 21st if you're comfortable with it moving forward without you there. I can be at the Alameda County Board of Supervisors that day, but we won't have your vote. So that's how we slip to the 28th on that.
Well,
I don't envision it being controversial, and I think we could do it with 4 board members.
well, I don't plan, I mean, I'm really hoping that we can get some sort of indication from Contra Costa County what time they're going to hear this item, because I sat through a lot of stuff there the other day when I went there.
Right.
I mean, a lot of stuff that, I mean, I know they, I mean, it'd be nice if they had this item as a set matter, because I do know they hear things in the afternoon too.
Right. We'll try to work with them. We just thought, given that the best date we were looking at was probably the 21st for the reasons we just
well, that would be
explored.
fine if it goes on the 21st, I guess, but.
But we thought 1 week and just lining them all up in the 28th where you could be guaranteed as well as audience members might all be able to show up. So, so is there a comfort level 28th for that reason? We don't want to unduly delay it, but that's how it's stacked up.
So not wanting to capitalize on the mic here, but I guess I am. These people have done this before. I mean, I read where it said both the grid and customer side, so I was assuming that they have done this kind of work before.
These companies have done a lot of similar things before. For a CCA, nobody has ever really done a local development business plan like this one for this kind of a project, but they've done a number of very similar things before that shoehorn nicely into the same mold.
Well, explain to me how this shoehorns nicely, because I read the staff report, and quite frankly, it really doesn't give me a lot of information. Please help me. Help me get comfortable with a $500,000 expenditure.
I'll let Bruce give you the more detailed answer. I will mention that one of the things we're doing that came out of our steering committee process, of course, that, as you know, was completely unique, was, we had a strong contingent in that process that wanted to do this plan, and there really wasn't another comparable plan anywhere in California or even more broadly.
No CCA or CCE or whatever, nobody, even after they got going, did a business plan?
I think there's some subsequent examples that are a little bit closer, but at this stage in the process, no entity that we know of has done something like this, and that was extremely unique to our process, absolutely. The various groups that were advocating for it said this will make us a better, stronger plan as a result, but this is fairly unique, yeah.
How do you operate a business without a business plan?
It's not a business plan.
It's really not a business plan. It's
It's a local development build-out.
Yeah, that was part of the terminology. I don't want to take up too much time on this, but for those members of the board who didn't see our process that we went through, the term business plan was routinely used, but as staff we did think of this as a local development build-out plan more than anything else, and there certainly was a business plan that was going to be integrated in this process regardless, but the focus on local sites at an extremely detailed, granular level, I think, is the difference between what is happening now that doesn't typically happen at this stage in the process.
Okay, then tell me exactly what they're going to do. Right. Since the whole time I was thinking when I was at the Board of Supervisors, you kept calling it a business plan. I thought it was a business plan.
Well, we didn't, but the public said business plan, yeah. But
well, yeah, you did. It was called a business plan. And even members of the Board of Supervisors were calling it a business plan. So tell me what it's going to do.
Well, I was just going to give just a broad overview. That there are 2 or 3 major components to it. The first 2, which will start happening very quickly, is that you'll have a consultant team start working on a survey of possible renewable energy potential for both in front of the grid or in front of the meter and behind the meter potential in Alameda County. They'll be looking at, especially in the urban area, they'll be looking at rooftops, parking lots, shopping malls, that sort of thing, to see where you can group a lot of, and aggregate a lot of different renewable energy projects, so that you can start building your local renewable energy portfolio as quickly as possible in some of these areas, and they'll be able to report back to the board even before the rest of the plan is done, sort of giving the board some idea of where these projects could be located. The rest of it would be an analysis of how to get those projects up and running quickly, how to how to go about investing in these local projects, how to get the best quality jobs out of them, union jobs, jobs with PLAs, high quality local jobs, and to keep that money flowing in the county and reinvest in the local communities.
The only thing I would add to that is I think the idea behind this whole exercise is to provide guidance to the CEO and to the board as to how to implement this, what are kind of the programmatic designs that can be developed to accelerate the process, not just of renewable energy, but we're talking about energy efficiency, energy storage, electric vehicle charging, and all the different important components of what we think community choice program should have, as well as an analysis of the ways, different options that are out there to finance these programs. So it's, in that sense, it's sort of a business plan to show that what the program could evolve into to help achieve the goals that are set out in the JPA.
And Seth, wouldn't you also add that I think some existing CCAs later in their process, as they've matured, have begun to explore those issues, but the idea of doing it right up front at the initial stage, I think that's what's unique about what we're doing.
That's correct. And I do think that the companies that submitted bids, and certainly the winning bidder, or the recommended winner, is it does have experience in, although maybe not this specific exercise, doing analysis of energy efficiency potential, doing solar siting surveys, analyzing different financing options. So the work certainly others have done, just not quite in this combination.
The different component parts they have done. Yes. The idea of, at this stage in the process, putting it into one document and calling it an LDBP, right. that's somewhat different.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Questions? Al?
Love the sigh after you calling me. So
it's just the fact you're standing over me for 2 hours.
It's rough being up here for me too, so hang in there. Right. I was someone who was a little skeptical about whether we would be able to sort of walk and chew gum at the same time, and so I worried that it might be putting too much on staff to do this early. But Al, you'll appreciate this. I was wrong. You guys have done a great job of moving this forward along with all the other items, and my compliments to you for that. And it's great. The sooner we have it, the better. And we're here now. We're ready to move forward with it. So I see no reason not to. We're going to want it. It's just, are we going to have it at the beginning, or are we going to wait a couple of years to have it? And apparently, we have a really good bidder who's very well qualified. And so I see no reason to delay.
That's a motion.
I will move the item if you're ready for it.
I got a motion and called a second. Is there any objection to the motion?
I'm just going to say second if you needed a second.
I got a second. Spadowski?
It just had one other comment. I thought on the steering committee, when we discussed the local business plan, it was mentioned that a lot of the elements from the plan would be used during startup anyway, that it was part of
the integrated resource plan.
Okay.
Which gets done, it's a required document that gets done within the first year.
Okay, so we can use some of the elements of this for the integrated resource plan.
Yes, they're supposed to live together.
Okay, so that's another comfort level there. So, okay, I support it.
Anybody else? All right, any objection to the motion?
Pardon me, you have 2 speaker cards.
What? Oh, when did you put those in front of me?
Just now.
You must have been looking the wrong way. Barbara Stebbins and Barbara Stebbins.
Sorry, we were calling public speakers earlier.
It's okay. Go ahead, Barbara.
One more time until it turns red. There you go.
I got it. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to come up and thank everybody for the fact that we now have a bidder that we're going forward with for the local development business plan. That has been something that Local Clean Energy Alliance, East Bay Clean Power Alliance have been advocating for before the county even took the first step. So I'm really excited. I know we're all very excited that Alameda County is going to set the standard for community choice energy programs, and we're really pleased to see it happen. Also, I just want to give really a big thanks to staff for being willing to look at some revisions that we turned into them Tuesday morning to get to you on the CEO thing. I realize that's a different agenda item, but I didn't get to speak on that one. I just really appreciate it. Our process is such that we go through 2 different organizations and want to give everybody time to comment on the product before we turn it over. So I really appreciate that staff took the time to do that. Thank you.
Frank, are you speaking on this item?
I'm sorry?
Never mind.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I was on the interview panel for the vendors that were bidding on this local development business plan, and they were all excited because we're doing it the way we are. We're doing this local development early in the process rather than waiting 4 or 5 years. They were really excited about it, and these are some of the leaders in the field, and they really think we're on the cutting edge.
Go tell Contra Costa County.
Well, I might do that.
All right. I had a motion and a second. Is there any objection to the motion? Motion passed without objection. Item 9.
Item 9 is Community Advisory Committee Scope and Conflict of Interest Code. Recommendations before the board are to review and approve the Community Advisory Committee scope, which is outlined in your staff memo, and we may have a slight revision to that staff recommendation here shortly, and also to approve the resolution adopting the Community Advisory Committee Conflict of Interest policy, that's EBCE R-2017-3. And helping us with that discussion is Indra Khalsa, our General Counsel.
Good evening, Board. Yeah, just to expand on that a little bit, the first item, the Community Advisory Committee scope, is purely policy matter. It's not a legal item, but I did pull together some items from scopes from similar agencies, including Peninsula Clean Energy, Sonoma Clean Power, Valley Clean Energy, and present this list of possible scope activities for your consideration and discussion tonight. It's still in draft form and really represents just a conglomeration of scope items from similar entities. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So you said still in draft form?
The scope? Yes. Well, we still consider this for discussion purposes tonight, and we're open to comments.
So, okay.
Oh, yeah. So, sorry about that. So there's an additional few considerations that we put on this slide for you to consider as you're looking at the scope. Just to keep in mind, the Joint Powers Agreement is very clear that the Community Advisory Committee is purely advisory and does not make any final decisions, so we need to keep the scope items within that legal authority. We would ask you to look at whether or not you feel it's too overly broad or too narrow and prescriptive. We want to try to hit that sweet spot. We would maybe items to consider would include how the CEO would interact with the Community Advisory Board and how that relationship might play out. And then finally, of course, there's the administrative and fiscal issues associated with a board like this. In the staff report, we noted that the board might choose to, for example, provide a contracting authority to the Community Advisory Board to conduct research, but perhaps those contracts would come back to the JPA Board for approval, and perhaps there would be a not-to-exceed amount. These are all items that you can consider.
Okay, so tonight, do you want us to approve the conflict of interest?
We were hoping to get your feedback on the scope tonight.
So On the
And then I
scope-
would like you to approve the conflict of interest code, which I'm also
Right, so you
happy to
just
speak
want
about.
you want us to talk to you about the scope and approve the conflict of interest.
That's correct.
So on the scope, when I kind of read through this, one of the things that came out, and maybe this is not where you want it to be, but I was kind of struck by a couple things. First of all, we keep saying that the chair of the group, of the committee, would be appointed to this board. Why do we say that? Why don't we let them pick who comes to the board? I mean, maybe they don't always want it to be the chair. Maybe Al's not the chair and they want Al to come. Maybe they want to appoint Al,
That's covered in the agreement, so let me pull up the appropriate section. Hold on.
So the JPA, so we set it up as the chair. Okay, well, that's why. Okay, and then the other question I have is, there's nothing about term limits in here. Is this where we would have term limits? The county has 12-year term limits, I think, or 10-year. What do we have, 10-year term limits?
Term limits would be absolutely an item for the board to consider. I don't know that that would be in the scope, but there's some items that are called to your attention.
Well, there
in
were
the staff
some other
report that are
things in
not
here
traditional
that
scope items.
led me to believe that we're making other rules, so I was wondering if there's these rules, then why wouldn't we have term limits here? Where would they put the term limits? In the bylaws? In the committee bylaws, or what?
I don't think there's any term limits.
If they're not in the JPA agreement, you could put them in bylaws that are yet to be determined, or you could have it be a policy of the board for the CS.
Right, the board could adopt rules of order and procedure and other rules affecting the Community Advisory Committee by resolution, and those would be binding on the committee.
Bruce?
Yeah, regarding term limits, there are some discussion of term limits in the JPA agreement under section 4.9. It says, members of the Community Advisory Committee shall serve staggered 4-year terms. The first term of 3 of the members shall be 2 years, and 4 years thereafter, which may be renewed.
Right, so there's no term limit.
I'm sorry?
How many term limits do they get?
It doesn't specify. It does say a member of the Community Advisory Committee may be removed by the Board of Directors for a majority vote. It says that the term may be renewed. It doesn't give a maximum number or minimum number of terms.
Yeah, well, there needs to be a maximum. I mean, it
Right,
can't
there's
be like forever, so that needs to be fixed. I mean, the county has, I think we have 10-year terms. You think it's 12? So maybe we should spell that out or fix that or something, but, so it's something we need to talk about. So before you today is to review, and we're not going to approve the scope, but to comment on the scope, and then to approve the conflict of interest. So does anybody else have any comments?
I do.
Al, and then we'll go to Pilt.
So I think the scope is good. I think that I had a question on the, is there a quorum requirement for the committee or no?
The committee is a Brown Act body, so it would be the majority of the persons present unless there is I can't imagine it's an advisory body, so it would be a majority of the persons on the board.
Okay, and if they don't have that, they can't meet?
Yes.
All right, so because of that, I would say that a stipend equivalent to the boards is appropriate to make sure that they, as an inducement to make sure they have that quorum at every meeting. I think that the other question you asked, should they have authority to approve contracts? If I'm understanding that correctly?
No, that's the contracts would be approved by the board, but in researching how some other entities have handled this, sometimes the Community Advisory Committee might be assigned a project that requires staff time or hiring a consultant, and then that contract would come back to the board for approval.
Yeah, so that's not
they've
something we need
established
to decide.
maximum amounts.
That's not something we need to decide tonight. We'd be doing that on a case-by-case basis as time goes on. Okay, and then the conflict of interest policy is also fine. So I'm basically agreeing with staff recommendations.
Vice Mayor Pilch.
Thank you. So just 2 things jumped out at me. One is that a member of the CAC may be removed by the Board of Directors by majority vote. We've already approved that, though, unfortunately. Is that set in stone, that we have to carry that forward? It seems a little overly harsh to me.
That's in the joint powers agreement, so that's done at this point. You'd have to amend the agreement.
It is done. Okay. I hadn't noticed that one before. So moving on to the second comment was, but the stipend, I believe, is something that you want feedback on. And I would recommend that we have a stipend. It tends to allow those with lesser means to be able to participate either with transportation, paying for transportation or possible lost wages. So I am in favor of a stipend. Thank you.
Okay. Galb.
So a couple things, and thank you for putting this together to the staff. The way I'm reading the scope, it's sufficiently broad. I mean, an advisory committee should be able to advise on anything that would, pretty much anything that would come up in open session anyway. And it seems that this is broad and inclusive enough where it covers most everything. So I'm fine with the scope language. If anybody in the audience or from our previous advisory committee members, now defunct advisory committee members, have any suggestions, I'm sure we would have heard them by now, or we're about to hear them in a few minutes. But it seems like it's pretty broad, so that's what it should be. There was just one in the staff report. It says here additional issues to consider, and in bold it says Chief Executive Officer reports to Community Advisory Committee. When I read the rest of that paragraph, I realized it's just meaning send a report to something. But just reading that bold title is misleading because there's no official employee reporting structure with the advisory committee. So
exactly, that was pointed out to me this morning. My intent was to say that the CEO will present reports to the community advisory committee. I certainly did not intend to create any superior type of hierarchy there.
Okay. All right, thank you.
There seems to be quite a bit of interest in this, Commissioner. How many applicants do we have already?
So far, we have about 10 or 12 applicants. I expect to have quite a few more coming in the beginning of next week, just before the deadline on March 8th.
How many did you say?
10 or 12 right now. I'd have to check my files, but it's about that many.
Okay, I think because of that, we need to assure that there's a well-balanced advisory, and there's so many. And I wanted to emphasize, because of that, item 1 on the scope is work on defined objectives as directed by the board. And I think the rest of the scope is fine.
Okay. I'm sorry, Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, I would just agree with Vice Mayor Pilch about the issue with the stipend. I'm on the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority, and the way we've done it there is there's not an automatic stipend, but if someone does want to apply, they're saying they have low income or hardship, we will accommodate, or we will basically take those into consideration. So, but not an automatic stipend, but.
Well, I think stipends are down the road, to be honest with you. That's kind of the way I feel about it. We got a lot of money going out and nothing coming in. Last time I checked, the county's owed a few $1 million, so I think we'll get there when we get there. That's how I feel. We just have to, we're all kind of doing this as a labor of love right now. I mean, I'm only one vote, though. Y'all want to start giving stipends, go ahead, but.
Well, the idea was that we would not give them automatically, but if there are hardship cases, they could be considered. So.
Yeah, well, I hear what you're saying, Councilmember. I do, but I haven't seen any money come in yet.
Well, it would be, compared to the money that we've been approving tonight, I'm sure it would be very, very small sums. So that's something to consider, I think.
I get it, but remember, I know we're spending other people's money right now, right? And, so, all right, Barbara Stebbins. Sit down, Al. How you did? You asked to speak on this item. Have you put down for 7 and 8?
Isn't this 9? Anyway, happy to speak.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So I'm going to bring up the issue of alternates for members of the Community Advisory Committee again. It kind of was postponed. It was brought up in either the last meeting or the first meeting, I'm not sure, and you all decided to wait to talk about it. But at that point, I wasn't thinking about the idea of quorum and the idea that we would need to have a quorum of members. And it's really going to be a lot easier to make sure we have a quorum if members are allowed to have alternates. So I'll just put that out there for you to think about.
Thank you. Al?
Sorry, I didn't get my card filled out, but I'll have it into you for a second. Thanks everybody for your concern around the Community Advisory Committee, and sort of Dan Kelp sort of invited me to come up and say something about it, but I just did want to, we're surprised about the proposed scope. I mean, I didn't know that was happening. We didn't know that was happening, but we'll take a look at it. But the language in the JPA says that the function of the advisory committee shall be to advise the board of directors on all subjects related to the operations of the CCA program as set forth in a work plan adopted by the board of directors. So that seems fairly clear that that the scope is very broad in the way that it's described. So, I mean, we'll look at this, but it's unclear why a scope is needed in addition to that language. So I was just going to ask, like, what the thinking is to provide a scope beyond what is already a very broad kind of scope. Is there, I mean, is it traditional or whatever?
We were considering this scope as sort of part of a work plan that would be adopted by the board, either the work plan or a component of the work plan that's called out in the joint powers agreement.
Oh, I see. So you're saying that the work plan itself should have a scope, and so this is the scope. Okay, well, we'll take a look at it and we'll comment on it. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that, I mean, we hadn't put forward any particular proposal around the question of, stipends or anything for the Community Advisory Committee. But if you look at the proposal that we had put out, last month in terms of the rationale and the thought behind a Community Advisory Committee, you really want you want advice from people who live in the community, who are community people, who have jobs and have responsibilities and have families, and for whom it's actually a hardship, to be coming out and participating for a 4-year period, or a term somewhat less than that, advising on a really important thing. And so what happens is the lack of a stipend will mean that as people get into it, they'll find it increasingly difficult to maintain that without having some, financial basis supporting that. And it doesn't have to be large, but it's a recognition of the importance of that function, to the program overall. It's just a sort of a sign of respect to the community that we're asking you to provide an important advice, and we think that you shouldn't have to bear that, out of your own pocketbook.
Okay, well, I can appreciate that, but the county has a lot of counties, a lot of commissions that we don't pay stipends to, and I just think it's going to be an ongoing discussion, to be very honest with you, especially until this organization gets up and running. It will be a discussion that will just continue. Okay, so I guess for today, we're looking for a motion on the conflict of interest. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's Resolution EBCE R 2017-3 adopting the Community Advisory Committee Conflict of Interest Policy.
But you also want a motion on the scope of work, yes?
No, you didn't.
We initially asked for approval, but felt that it's still a work in progress, and we're more seeking direction. Thank you.
Then I'll move the item 2, the conflict of interest policy.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Is there any objection to the motion? Motion passed without objection. Item 10, board member and staff announcements. We'll start with the board members. Any board member have any announcements? Seeing none, staff announcements.
None right now, no.
No. Chris, do you have anything?
No, we were just discussing the possibility of whether you want to adjourn 2 weeks or fully till April, which is actually technically the next item.
Do you need a meeting on March 15th?
We do not feel a pressing need for a meeting on the 15th. We did want to note that if we were adhering to the agreed-upon schedule, I think we wouldn't have the next meeting until well into April, right? April 12th.
If we were going to stick with the third Wednesday, we would be going to April 12th.
That's the second Wednesday, no?
That's all that's available, because the space is not available the third Wednesday, so it would be April 12th.
Just because of Hayward?
I'll just be getting in from DC.
So you would need to adjourn to that time and place because it's not a regularly scheduled meeting.
What?
I realize we just made that confusing. So it sounds from what I'm hearing from my staff that regardless in April, we'll be looking at April 12th meeting, correct? Because of the availability of the chambers. That because of that availability, you would be having a fairly long adjournment for a bit more than a month.
That doesn't really work for me.
I think, can staff accommodate that? That's what we were trying to figure out.
March 15th?
Well, we know we can accommodate March 15th. I think the board's asking if we can accommodate April 12th and still get our work done.
Yes, but it would be, we would have to say that there may be some things that would be timely for later on in March that we
cannot brief you on, right? Yeah, that's right. So I think it's really the information flow that you would prefer. I think there's no crucial thing that we would have to have your guidance on, but there's some things you might want to hear about that we could brief you on in terms of updates on, bid protest, et cetera. So I think we can get by without a meeting again in March, but we could certainly fill up your time on March 15th.
Question? March what? When?
The scheduled time, Mr. Chair, is March 15th, and we certainly could fill up a meeting reasonably well with that.
We just had a 2-hour meeting, okay? Right. And in my opinion, we moved rather rapidly on really issues that weren't all that meaty. And I'm not really interested to cancel a meeting, so you have a 4-hour meeting next time or a 3-hour meeting next time. So I would rather have a 2-hour meeting than a 3-hour meeting or a 4-hour meeting. So what date are you looking at?
If you would like to, per your guidance you just provided, it sounds like we should stick to March 15th. Right.
March 15th, it's already on the calendar.
Okay, March 15th. We're adjourning to March 15th. Thank you.
How are you?